downtown from coast to coast and way downtown from coast to coast.
Happy Hump Day and welcome into the latest edition of Betting Weekly Fast Break. I'm Doug Kezirian alongside professional handicapper Wes Reynolds, and we are one day away from perhaps the end of the NBA season. Game 6 in Indianapolis. We got a home underdog situation. This time yesterday, we had a line move during the show because of the status of one Tyrese Haliburton. We'll get into that momentarily. We'll also get into the one WNBA game on the slate. Very intriguing handicap. The betting nerd in me is just so curious how this game plays out. So many moving parts that would support a play both on the favorite and then others on the underdog. So we'll break all that down coming up, Wes. But you are back from Indianapolis as we have boots on the ground here in Vegas. But you're still rocking the gear from Indy.
Yeah, I got one more day, maybe to do that. Perhaps they take it to Game 7 and have one more punch left in them. But of course, the topic A is going to be the status of Tyrese Haliburton. He spoke to the media today, said he was going to do everything in his power to play. Basically, not much there. Not much there from Rick Carlisle either. Said he went through all the walkthroughs and whatnot, but that's going through walkthroughs, not going full speed. So, you know, we shall see. That's going to be an interesting, how you treat that. We are already, and we'll get to that momentarily. We're already seeing some discounts in the props for sure.
And that's the domino effect to all of this. So yesterday on the show, the announcement came down. It moved from about 4.5 to 6.5. So sorry, it's 4.5 to 6.5. And the over-unders come down a little bit too. Now the series price is unchanged. And like you said, there are props. So I guess first things first, Halliburton's status, we don't know. He has a strained calf. What do you expect from seeing him and see how many minutes and production and how the Pacers sort of respond?
I think he's going to play, and look, that's obviously very highly speculative, but I believe that he is going to play here, and tried to give it a go there. He was basically a decoy out there, I think, offensively, to be out there, and we saw what happened in game number 5 when it was I think from about 7:49 to the 5:05 mark, because remember the Pacers cut that to 2 at the 8.5 minute
Oh, the
mark.
fourth quarter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Oklahoma City got a quick 5-0 spurt, timeout, 7:47 left to go on the clock. From the 7:49 to the 5:05 mark, the Pacers committed 5 turnovers that led directly to 10 Thunder points. It was a 5-point game before Nemhard got it taken away, and I think it was the Case Wallace dunk. So Nemhard in that period had 3 turnovers. Halliburton had 2. They led directly to points, either a basket or points at the foul line. So all of a sudden, a 5-point game became a 15-point game, just like that in a little over 2.5 minutes. And you just knew that Halliburton, he was compromised. So probably the mistake, and Rick Carlisle hasn't made very many mistakes. Probably the mistake he made, of course, was not putting in TJ McConnell when he took that timeout at 7:47, because he took him out before the fourth quarter to give him a little rest, because McConnell's not a guy who can play like 15, 18 minutes straight without a blow. He's a guy that goes all out for a 7, 8 minute spurt against tired defenders, and then you take him out. But just maybe a missed opportunity there, even though the Thunder were clearly the better team in Game 5. But I think he's probably he's going to try to play here, because he even said something in the Game 5 post game presser where he was like, I earned my right to be here. I worked hard to be here, basically. So it's like, of course, I'm going to try to give it a go. So I think that mentality, and maybe Rick Carlisle is going to say, hey, we know we're up against it. We're gonna see if you can go, and we're gonna let you go, even if you're not 100%. We're gonna let you go. So I tend to think that they're gonna lean on that side.
But he said if he can walk, he will play. And perfectly understandable. The question is, will the team respond, and will this serve as sort of an injection of energy or just like a distraction and do more harm than good? That's my concern in that regard if you're a Pacers backer. By the way, we have a ruling on the WNBA, no suspensions for tonight's game. So we'll get into that a little bit, but that did just come down. So gut-wrenching loss for them in the last game. And the Pacers have been solid at home, though. But this is a closeout game, and the team that's favored usually can see the light at the end of the tunnel Just from an emotional standpoint, we know Miles Turner said, we're going to come out and fight, things like that. And we saw the Celtics do this against the Knicks down, 3-1. They had the injured Tatum. What do you expect here from just an energy standpoint from Indy?
Would expect a high level of energy at least in the first half. So you know that would be the way I would looking at it when we get into the spread discussion. Is I think hey, we're up against it. The people are still with us, even though they might be a little bit cynical about where we are, and potentially getting resigned to the fact that this is not going to happen for the Pacers. But I would expect some big energy, especially if Tyrese plays, where it's like, okay, because I don't know if the Thunder, I'm not saying they're necessarily going to relax, but they know now that they've taken control of the series. They know that they have. And they know that they can, that they can come up big and they can get down and they can win in the fourth quarter. And that's exactly what they did in game number 4. So I think you see the Pacers maybe with more of the intensity early in the first half on Thursday.
So, that's the question, right? Do the Pacers, in order for them to have the right energy, they have to believe that they can win the next 2 games. And it's just human nature, right? Early in the series, you have that sort of optimism, but now because I was a little disappointed with their effort on Monday. I thought half the team showed up like they blew the
Hmm.
series in game 4, and they looked dejected. Now, incredible rally to cut it to 2. I did not see that coming at all. So they did it. I was disappointed with their performance in game 5.
I was as well. Look, I think that they tried to get Pascal Siakam going, which he needed to do. He needs to carry more of the load. I think, and probably even more so with certainly less than 100% Tyrese Haliburton, assume he goes tomorrow. So Pascal needed to initiate the offense a little bit more. But yeah, I thought some of those guys, I thought Andrew Nemhard had a terrible game. He really struggled, and I think that was more evident by the fact that TJ McConnell was able to come in and get them right back in the game. And I just thought a lot of carelessness with the ball. You know that the Thunder can take it away from you, and you know how good they are defensively. You cannot be careless with the ball. And I've said this on a previous episode of Fast Break here. You can't dribble too much against this team. If you do, they're going to take it away from you. If you're going to dribble, you need to do it where it's taking you somewhere. You need to do it with a purpose. That was the difference that you saw when TJ McConnell got in the game. When he was dribbling the ball, he's going forward. He is going somewhere with a purpose, and he's going north and south. I know we always hear that for like a running back in football, go north and south versus east to west. Pacers did a lot more side to side stuff where it's like, man, you got to dry. You got to. That's what they were doing in game 3. That's why they won, and they had 60 points in the paint. It's because they were driving to the rim, and they got away from that in game number 4. Now the Thunder made some adjustments to make that obviously more difficult to run that particular action. But yeah, the aggressiveness I just did not think maybe was there in game number 5, where I think you're probably right, where it's like half kind of knew what the situation was, and then half were kind of a little bit tentative. And I think that's what you saw from these teams.
I agree, and I'd said like half the guys, like you mentioned, Nebhard and stuff. It's just tough because the Thunder can break your spirit, right? And they kind of did in Game 4 with that comeback, and you're like, man, what do we have to do to win 2 more of the next 3? And it's human element, but maybe Pacers for okay. So let's talk about this. The line is now 6.5. The over/unders come down a little bit. Let's talk about the spread. We talked about it last week. OKC was 0-8 ATS on the road in this entire postseason, only 4-4 straight up. They pull the rabbit out of the hat late and not only get the win, they get a gross cover because Matherin can't make a free throw. So they're now 1-8 ATS with a soft one, if you will, in that record. So there's a tax here with Halliburton and everything. How do you play the spread? Don't you have to take the Pacers here, or do you think they fold like a cheap suit late and the Thunder pull away, like we've seen in closeout games? Closeout games in the finals, when these teams win on the road, they run through the tape. Okay, we saw the Warriors do that against the Celtics in 2022. We've seen teams handle their business on the road at the end of a series. So what do you think, Wes?
Yeah, well, the way I would look at it, and I was just looking at numbers here. Bet Rivers
Yeah.
has one of the best in the market if you like the Pacers side in the first half on Thursday, and I do at plus 3.5 because I think that the spread has moved to 6.5, where it's kind of like splitting the difference here because the odds makers obviously don't know. They know that they're going to get bet on bad news because Tyrese Haliburton is not given a 100% go. So it's not a surprise that this has moved to six in some places, 6.5 predominantly in the market. There's probably a tad bit of runway. I think if Tyrese Halliburton is officially ruled out, then you're going to see this likely move. I think maybe 7.5 might be the ceiling on this, potentially a rogue eight out there in the market. But a lot of the move has already been made. I think on the Halliburton news because this was five on
That's
the
baked in.
yeah, this was five on the opener. There's like I said, there's a little bit of room to move, but not as much as you might think. So I'm looking at Pacers plus 3.5 first half. I think, look, you're up against it, and they have not started well. By the way, they have trailed in all three first halves at Oklahoma City in this finals, but they've led in both halves at home. So I think the home crowd that's enough early on because the crowd I think now has to feel like we have to pull this team across here. We have to pull this team across the tape to use your term. So they have to be better. They have to be into it. Uh, Pacers plus 3.5 first half, likely where I'm going.
Yeah, and I think when you talk about first quarters and first halves, I mean, that second unit for Indy's been such a difference maker with McConnell and Matherin to start the second quarter. I think you have to play the first half and not the first quarter line. What do you think?
Yeah, because it depends on how much they're going to play Shea Gilgis
Yeah.
Alexander in the first quarter. Because you've seen over the last two games, in games 1 through 3, he did his usual 12 minutes or maybe like 11:30 or 11:15, basically the entire first quarter. And in game number 3, the first game back in Indianapolis, that's where you thought, okay, maybe he's a little bit out of gas because he looked out of gas because they were forcing him to do a lot more isolation, right? He was, having to go off the dribble, go off the bounce, which he certainly can do. But when you do that enough, that's going to take some energy out of you. And you saw the adjustment they made in game number 4. Shea, I think they took him out maybe midway through or if about 4 minutes left to go in the first quarter. And they were letting Jalen Williams play the whole first quarter. So then Jalen Williams became like the ex officio point guard, in some of the minutes also with Caruso, where he could also run those sets. But and then what you saw them do that's where Shea had more energy, and they carried that over. By the way, in game number 5 too, he had over 30 points, and it seemed like a quiet 30 points, didn't it? as
I feel like every time he puts up a number like that, it's quiet.
Yeah, yeah, and had 10 assists as well. So because everything was about Jalen Williams, and the Scottie Pippen comparisons that we were getting in the post game. So everything was about J Dub and not so much about SGA. But I wonder if Danielle now thinks, okay, now we've got him on the ropes here. Do I try to play him so much early? And I don't know maybe if he's going to want to change because he got a lot of criticism early in the series from changing and not running that double big with Hartenstein and Holmgren enough. So maybe he's like, you know what? Why mess up a good thing? We've won the last 2 games, so we're going to basically keep the same rotations at least early.
I want you to get involved in the conversation. Comment on the comment in the comment section here on the YouTube channel, and we will respond. Whether it be something you like, dislike, bets you suggest, you want our opinion on. Shane back in the mix. Still, Pacers got this. He's been riding the Pacers the entire postseason, so we love that he is undeterred. I think he and Wes are seeing eye to eye on some things. We'll get into props. Adam Osimo has a prop, but I want to stick with the side or total here. So Game 5 sneaks over the total with a big second half. The market continues to adjust. Some of it Halliburton influenced, and other is just as the series gets later and later, we see things go lower and lower in terms of scoring. How would you play the total here?
Yeah, it has been discounted, I think, largely because of Tyrese, but also the fact in an elimination game because I ended up going 1-1 where I played the under at 224, and then I tried to middle it basically. I wasn't necessarily buying out, I was trying to middle it. playing that second half over, which basically would have amounted to 217. So anywhere from 228 to 224 gives you a little bit of wiggle room, a 6 point middle there. Did not happen. It went over in the second half. Pacers got the offense going a little bit, especially in the McConnell minutes in the third quarter. So you've already been discounted. So I don't want to necessarily play under 221 and a half. I think this is only going to go upwards, even if Tyrese is given the go. You're going to see a little bit of tick, I think, upwards. It probably won't get to where it opened at a 224 and a half by and large. It won't get up to that, but we're seeing 222 and a half at Bet Rivers. There's probably about a point and a half room of runway here, I think, for the over, assuming that Tyrese is officially given the clearance for game number 6. So, you know, I usually like to play these elimination games under,
Too.
and they've proven to be good bets long term, but do you get fouling at the end? You're not going to get it if it's 20 points with 3 minutes to go. Then you're not going to get that. But if the Pacers are, let's say, down 6 or 7, right around the number, it's like, okay, you got to play that game a little bit like they had to do in game number 4 last Friday night. So no play as of yet on the total for me, but I'll be monitoring.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's well said. I like unders typically in general, especially in these types of elimination games, but little uneasy at 222 and up. I just wonder if the Pacers sort of get flat here. This has potential to be a 110-96 game
Sure.
kind of thing.
Sure. Now, the thing is, they have been. This, by the way, was the first time that they had lost 2 games in a row in the playoffs. What we saw on Monday night. This team has been a resilient bunch, though, Doug. You
Yeah.
don't
First
win.
time they're trailing in a series.
Yeah, you don't win 14 games in the playoffs. I know there've been some of those hot takes out there that people shouldn't listen to about, oh, this is the worst team ever to make the NBA finals, or oh, they don't
Uh,
belong here. Yeah, they've gotten lucky 14 times apparently in this postseason to win 14 playoff games and to get to game number 6 of the NBA finals. So this is a resilient bunch. This is not, they may not look like brutes in terms of toughness, but I think that this is a mentally tough team. And I think that this is a team that got some togetherness here and has some unity. And I think, that might be enough, at least early on, to sustain and keep them in the game because I don't think that they're going to give up here. I don't think, I know there were some uneven performances in game number 5, but at home, I don't think that they're going to give up. And what has been a constant refrain that we have talked about in these episodes over the last few weeks here in the playoffs? Role players play better at home. I think Charles Barkley pointed to that. He's absolutely right. So that's where, okay, you're going to get somebody step up. Maybe it's Toppin. Maybe it's Bradley or Brian, even though Bradley got more of the minutes because they were mirroring him in the Hartenstein minutes, basically, and then having Turner in the Chet minutes. So somebody I feel that has kind of had a down game or maybe a down series or a couple down games is going to have a breakout game for the Pacers and keep this competitive.
I agree. It's not just role players, but I said this last week with this Pacers team and why I thought they were live on the series at a certain juncture when they were up 2-1 and going into game 4 is they have a couple MFers, which you need. Every team needs them. The Lakers weren't really that solid until they got our test. And this team has multiple guys that give them that edge. It's Matherin, it's McConnell, it's Neesmith for sure. You need those dudes to to make some of these other guys play a little tougher. And a guy like Siakam and those guys are all solid in terms of toughness, but you need some of these dudes that play off the crowd and play with an edge. And I think that's why I do like the first half. And let's face it, this Thunder team kind of plays with their food a little bit. Are they really going to cover 3 straight games? Now, they didn't play well in the first of this 3-game potential streak. So I kind of throw that away like, well, they didn't really cover, even though they did. Technically, it was a bad beat. Like they didn't play well all game. They played well in the fourth quarter and responded. And the SGA hit the step back 3 down 103-99 to cut it to 1, and their defense has been excellent. I just think 6.5 is a little too high. I think the first half line is a good angle because you isolate that second quarter. I may just play the second quarter spread for the Pacers in advance. I just like that bench unit. once I learned that McConnell is
Yeah.
not going to start in place of Halliburton or something like that, and they're going to do the usual substitution pattern, I really like that second unit and what they've done to this OKC team.
And here's another thing you got to consider with the Thunder. One of the things that I thought was the real killer on Monday night was that you got 7 combined threes from Case and Wallace and Aaron Wiggins. That was an
Yeah.
absolute killer for the Pacers and really put them behind the 8 ball. Wallace, we know his clock had been decreasing and they'd been running Caruso. Caruso, who I played under the points, did go 29 minutes, only scored 2, went 1 of 8 from the floor. But Case and Wallace had 11 points in just 17 minutes. He hit 3 of 4 threes. Aaron Wiggins goes 4 of 7. So are you going to get those contributions again? And I don't think it's not like with some of these guys with like Toppin, well, on the Pacers, where I think you've been getting consistent contributions off the bench from him, and for the most part from McConnell too. Caruso is technically off the bench, but he's basically a sixth starter because Hartenstein only went 20 minutes in game number 5. So it's kind of like what I called Robo Hart, where Mitchell Robinson and Josh Hart, who one of them two were going to start, but Hart got the majority of the minutes. That's what I think is happening with Caruso. But I don't think this bench for the Thunder has necessarily been consistent. I think the Pacers unit
Oh
has
God, no.
been much more consistent. So I'm going to bet against the fact that we're going to see Aaron Wiggins, Case, and Wallace shoot 7 of 11 from the 3. Pacers, by the way, got to make those adjustments too, because there were too many open corner threes. That was a theme against the Thunder early in the series where it's like, how are the Pacers so open on these corner threes? Now it's the Thunder that have been open. So Carlisle and company got to make the adjustment for that. But I would bank on Wiggins and Wallace not having that similar production here.
All right, let's talk about production from players in the form of player props. I want to start with SGA because he had 10 assists in game 5 after 0, the bagel in game 4, which you nailed in terms of that prop. Now we gave our money back in game 5. So that was unfortunate, but you were onto something here. So now we have his prop. What's the best way to play SGA's props? He always has a quiet point production. His assists have been a little all over the place, so I don't even know what to expect here. How would you play SGA, who's got a 6.5 assist prop again for Game 6?
Would probably lean under with that. The points 33.5. That's basically what you're getting with him from now on.
Mm.
You're basically getting that. Whether he goes under or goes over, you're not seeing a lot of adjustments there necessarily. So that's what it's going to be. 6.5 juice to the under. I think that's probably right. So there's not necessarily a lot of number value. And look, you're not getting a lot of number value on player props in Game 6 of the NBA Finals necessarily. There's not going to be as many mistakes. There's going to be some disparate results, but there's not going to be, I think as many mistakes. So probably the way, and I'm just searching through as we go to kind of look at some numbers here. Assist, if I'm picking points, rebounds, or assists, certainly is the way I think I would want to attack. Maybe for what is the points in the assist? I believe it is 40 and a half. Okay, that's
It's up. I think it's 41.5.
okay. Would lean under, by the way, at 41 and a half, maybe more so than the 40 and a half, because that's still a lot of points to get to. And he can get
I
to it.
agree.
And he did so in game number 4 in the fourth quarter, where he had a bunch of points and they just eked over that total last Friday night in Indianapolis. But and he just stayed under.
7 free throws in the final minute too.
Yeah,
That
yeah. So
that
that pushed him over. 33 and a half is a lot. I certainly wouldn't be playing the over on the points. So
I
I think
agree.
I think maybe the assists are the way to go, because the Thunder now have proven that they can initiate the offense, even though he had peak assists in the last game with 10. They can initiate the offense where it's not always him bringing the ball up the floor. Sometimes it's Caruso. Sometimes it's Jalen Williams. And one of
He's getting fatigued.
yeah, because we're seeing that too on the Pacers side with Andrew Nemhard. He is having to put so much into guarding Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, and he's been the primary defender, by the way. Now, sometimes they get switches, and it's Neesmith or it's somebody else, but he's the predominant guy on Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. So that's why you're seeing on offense, really, I think, uneven performances from Andrew Nemhard, because you're having to put so much energy in on defense with that. So Fatigue makes cowards of us all, and it works both ways, I think, here.
Adam Osimo, regular here in the chat, had a really good point about this in terms of the narrative potentially contributing to SGA's production. Obviously, they're focused on the championship, but Adam Osimo says SGA is one more 30-point game away from tying MJ and Olajuwon for most 30-point games in a single postseason. Do you think that weighs in back of his head a little bit at all?
Ah, I don't know as much,
I don't think so.
especially
I
with the
don't think
game.
so.
It depends on the game flow. Like, if this is close down the stretch, I still feel like the Thunder maybe can get into a little bit now. They made the proper adjustment in game number 4. I still feel like they can get a little bit ISO heavy. And the team that gets ISO heavy is the team that lost. I felt it was the Pacers that did that in game number 4, just like I felt it was the Thunder that did that in game number 3. When you go ISO heavy, I think that that's bad news for your team because your offense is stagnant. You're not getting clean looks necessarily. So, yeah, I think that theory is probably true. That was brought up there.
Okay. Um, what other player props have caught your eye? I discussed yesterday on the show that I'm going with Holmgren over 8.5 rebounds. That's minus 139 when we locked it in on Tuesday's show. I'm also looking at Hartenstein under his points. We've been hammering that, or at least playing it all postseason or all series, I should say, this particular series, and it's gotten there. But the problem is it keeps moving. It's now 5.5. I'm ready. I'm close to pulling the trigger on the under 5.5, but I do like the Holmgren over rebounds, like I mentioned. What about you? Anything outside of? I know we just talked about SGA. Anything stand out?
Do we have the guts to fade Jalen Williams off that performance in game number 5? He's at 23.5 on the points. Haven't seen really a lot of movement, and we heard the Scottie Pippen comparison. So sometimes I like to play against that, even though I don't think Brian Windhorst is necessarily wrong about that. He was the first one I heard really kind of say that he's got a little Scottie Pippen in him, and I respect Brian Windhorst's knowledge of basketball. I think he knows a lot. So I would respect that. But, you know, Jalen Williams, he can have some disappearing acts too. And we've seen that even in this postseason and even in this series. So I'm not there yet, but I would lean a little bit 23 and a half. I was hoping I'd love to get like 24 and a half, or maybe bettors are going to bet what they see last and drive this
Well,
up.
the juice is signaling you're more likely to get 22 and a half.
Yeah, I know. We'll see how that moves, but most of the action, of course, isn't going to come until tomorrow. With these being up and having 3 days in between. But I want to sell, but man, I don't know if I'm getting. I don't know if I'm getting the number. So the angle and the number, I think, have to be consistent. And then I think you got to look at Halliburton props. Now, granted, if he's ruled out, these are no action. And then there's always a risk that maybe he tries to give it a go for 6 minutes and then they take him out. So I don't know what to think of that. But 13 and a half after he was 17 and a half and 18 and a half, I'd only buy the dip here, Doug, rather than play the under. I would only buy on the dip if you're playing
Yeah.
Tyrese Haliburton. I know that's a little bit of a risk here, with what you're doing here, but I could only do that because he could still hit those like step back threes, maybe. How much he can move as a driver is going to beg the question with this calf issue, but he could still, I think, chuck them threes and they could go in. So 15 and a half, I think, on the on or 13 and a half on the points. That'd be an over I'd look at. Like on the rebounds, now you're getting a discount here at 4.5, would lean under because I don't know how much jumping he's going to do for those like weak side rebounds, which we know he can gobble up. So rebounds, I'd lean under. Assists, you're already getting the
Like
discount here.
rebounds.
Yeah, yeah,
I think the rebounds is really smart. It's 3.5 at Bet Rivers. Unders plus 120.
yeah, yeah.
So that's something to keep. I think that's a really, really smart angle. But it also they're going to treat it. Is he going to be on the bike when he's not playing, kind of
Right,
thing, just to
right.
be prevent it from stiffening up? I mean, 3.5 is not a big number either. And those long rebounds sometimes go at you, and you can't even. It's not even. You don't even need much effort to get them. But I think that's a smart way to do it.
Some of these things, obviously, you're going to have to play the waiting game a little bit. Like the points, I wouldn't play the waiting game. If you're going to play it over now because it's going to go up once he's ruled in. They're going to make that little move on air, and it's going to go up, maybe split the baby here, split the difference, where it's going to be 15 and a half, because it's been 17 and a half, 18 and a half. So it probably, if he's given a go and upgraded to probable, when we see that on the Don Best screen and on the social media, that's going to split the difference. It's going to go to 15 and a half. So the points I would play now, but the other stuff like rebounds and assists, I would wait on, because you might get a bump here where you could play like an under 4.5 rebounds. I could see that at Bet Rivers going to 4.5 rebounds, and then having that. The assists have already been discounted because he's been going under, because his assist potential, I think, even if he's healthy, is limited in this series. It's a lot more limited than it has been against the Knicks or the Cavs. So now you're seeing 6.5 juice to the over. These were 8.5. I think the close was 8.5 minus $1.40 in game number 5, if memory serves me correctly, and I believe that it does. Now you're getting 6.5. So now it's kind of like, if you're wanting to bet the under, it's already discounted. So probably no value there.
Okay, so any official plays out of you? Maybe you were looking at Pacers first half, anything along those lines?
Pacers first half for now at plus 3.5. And the props, I wish I could give out more, but
Okay.
I gotta play the waiting game, I think, on these, because
Look, I mean, that's life with an injury, right? A key injury. So I certainly can't fault you for that.
yeah, yeah. So I'm gonna play the waiting game on a lot of these here in terms of the props. And by the way, most of the movement, most of the action is gonna come tomorrow, of course.
Okay. Um, you are back on the show on Friday. We may have a game 7. So this is your final appearance before before game 6, but you're on Friday's show, and if not, we'll look at if there's no game 7, we'll talk WNBA and some other stuff. So,
We got a lot
Wes,
to
good
talk
luck for
about
you.
in the WNBA.
We sure do, and let's pivot to that because we do have one game tonight, and we've had some news come down, as I mentioned, no suspensions, and we've had a line move. So the Mercury now 14 and a half point favorites on the road at the Connecticut Sun, total 157. And it's a fascinating handicap that I mentioned earlier because you have a giant flat spot off an emotional game for a Sun team that's already not that good. Then you have the Mercury coming in, just got Kalea Copper, who's literally an Olympic starter, who just played her first game, and they got a nice win on Sunday. Now they're traveling, and so they're trying to work out the kinks, if you will, but they also play tomorrow. So they have their own back to back. They're at the Liberty, the defending champs. So I just wonder if the flat spot kicks in. So I'm not really sure how to play this. I think it's like 2 moving parts in opposite directions kind of thing. So I can't lay the 14 and a half, but I do think the Suns stink. I think they play hard. They got there with the cover plus 18 yesterday, just barely lost by 17. But I just wonder where their minds are at and their emotion is at in this game off yesterday's emotional game with the Fever.
Yeah, with that fracas at the end, that certainly put the number in jeopardy. I was fortunate to be on the 18, but look, the Sun. I think some of that is frustration, obviously, because they're not winning. They know that they're a rebuild there. We know Mabry wanted to be traded before the season, and just kind of an uneven team here. So having to play back to back, not an easy spot against the Mercury. And you mentioned the Mercury. They are getting healthy here now, with Alyssa Thomas back, now with Copper back. So it feels like, and honestly, they're a top heavy team. They don't really, I think, have a great bench, but they have,
I disagree.
you think
I
they have a good,
respectfully disagree. Well, no, on paper, but I think the coach is really good. Tibbetts gets the most out of these players, and he knows their strengths and weaknesses and puts them in spots. So I agree that they're not big names, but they play pretty well. Like Wickham knows she's a shooter. She's got the green light. She had 18 off the bench in the last
she,
game.
I believe,
Now
is
she
going to be
played more
out
minutes.
tonight.
I'm sorry?
I think she might be out tonight,
Okay.
actually.
But, like, Mac comes in, knows exactly what she's doing, hits the boards. I like Musa, I like Locks. I mean, they all kinda know their roles, and he does a nice job of sort of positioning them accordingly to play off their 3, superstars. So, I actually think the bench and the supporting cast is really nice in that it's not just a giant drop off. I think he staggers them well with his 3 aces, and so there's never just like that giant drop off when everyone goes to the bench. When you have 3 studs like he does, he knows how to stagger them and then the role players play off them as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I could certainly see that, but I think being at full strength, probably not going to do anything on the side and the total. But I think maybe there's a couple different angles you can look at here. How about Alyssa Thomas over 8.5 against her old team? Now, I don't think that plays anything because I don't know how many players are left on that old team where she was, of course, a
Right.
long time with the Connecticut Sun. But you know,
Is that all her point total is 8.5?
no, 8.5 assists. 8.5 assists, not
Okay.
not
Okay.
not points. So would lean a little bit 8.5 assists, or if you're not going to play it that way, perhaps another way to play it is to play Satu Sabali under points and assists under because Satu, if you've watched her, because with these players out, with Copper and with Alyssa Thomas out, she's had to kind of do a little bit more. She's had to do, be an assist person as well. So Satu Sabali points and assists, I think, is also a way that you can look here. I think 22 and a half is what I'm seeing, but that probably be the way I would go because now Satu can maybe function a little bit more on just being, just doing scoring and rebounding, rather than distributing. So I'm looking at the points right now, and it's
Copper was in a minutes count on Sunday,
okay.
so she was somewhat limited. Now, I don't know if that's gonna increase by a lot or increase at all, but that's something to consider. We're not quite at full strength with the Mercury.
True, true. But we've seen the Sabali points already go down. This was 20 and a half in the overnight,
Okay.
and now we're seeing down to 19 and a half. So, if you want to have a little bit more
Dangerous.
insurance, yeah, if you want to have a little bit more insurance, maybe go with the points and the assist there on Satu Sabali. And then, you have to also wonder, by the way, these are no longer, these are no longer Commissioner's Cups games. So you're not getting the margin of victory necessarily play out where it'd be a blowout and you'd see some of these starters in the game. You may not see that here, especially with the Mercury going to play New York and Brooklyn on Thursday. So this could be a blowout, and then you worry, okay, if they're up like 16 with 5 minutes to go, that they're going to go with the reserves and think that they got this game in hand.
The number's pretty low though at 157. Like that's the concern. Or 158, excuse me. So the total being the under. Yeah, I feel like this is a tight market and it's a really tough read.
Oh yeah, I think it is too. But I mean, I don't really think I have an interest in the Sun at all. Based on last night and all of that.
What about a first quarter Sun? Anything like that? Like still fired up from yesterday?
Looking at could be 4.5 juice to the Mercury side, but the
It's a big number.
yeah, I wouldn't want to lay the Mercury, even though I think that they're pretty well rested.
Right, but do they come out like, "All right, let's just go beat up this bad team"? I don't know. Or maybe they're like, "Hey, let's take care of our business, bring the lunch pail, get in, get out, and we're on to the defending champs tomorrow." It's a stay away across the board. I like your idea of props. I like betting Mabry overs when I think the defense is gonna be like, "All right, let's just get the win and get the heck out," then because she's money. She's a little slow. So
Yes.
if there's a apathy on the opposing defense, meaning they're gonna sag and she's just gonna bomb all day, and she has a fiery personality, as we really saw yesterday. But I can see her wanting to go off, and then if they're gonna be just kinda going through the motions on defense, but you can definitely shut her down if you have a very athletic defender like Kalea Copper, who doesn't get caught in picks. But if they're coming in with a mindset of being flat, then I think it's a great opportunity to, pounce on Mabry overs. I just don't see that. I do think over 2.5 made threes does feel really cheap.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Look, I could see that, but if I'm gonna do anything here, it would be probably the Sabali under points and assists here with just more distribution of the ball. With just more other people, even with Copper on a minutes restriction, but Alyssa Thomas back, back in Connecticut against her old team, or old organization, I should say. Uh, yeah, nothing for me. But I don't really want to like look for a play here, if I don't really have anything strong. and
No need to force it.
yeah, because this a little bit of a shaky spot here, kind of a standalone game because now we're done with the Commissioner's Cup. Of course, it's going to be the Fever and the Lynx on July 1st are going to be that. So Sabali under points and assists or the Alyssa Thomas over assists, one of the two. They could potentially be correlated, but that gets a little dangerous in the WNBA.
Okay. I have a same game parlay. We got to give the people something. I actually really like this bet the more I think about it. What would you say for both Mabry and Sabali to each make 2 3-pointers?
Well, I'm looking at the numbers right now. Let's see.
It's plus 120 too.
Yeah, Mabry, from what I'm seeing on the threes, is what over 2.5 even money. I think
Yeah,
is
plus 107
okay. Plus one hundred
for
seven.
three threes, but I'd rather have two plus
Right,
threes instead of three, and then add Sabali for two plus threes.
and Sabali, if you just take it separately, is 1.5 juice to the over. So yeah, I could. I'm just looking to see, where it's moved a little
Shooting
bit.
a lot, like that's the thing. Like Sabali's like chucking in a good way. Like she looks for her shots in the break, in transition, she will shoot. She had 8 3-point attempts in the last game. And that's again playing with Copper. So there's, maybe some stats will change, but they're not. She had 10 attempted threes in the previous game. She is shooting and she's encouraged to shoot and she's lighting it up. So I think the volume's going to be there. We only need two out of her. And Mabry, let's face it, she doesn't want to drive on these teams. She just wants to bomb threes, and she shoots deep threes. Not quite Caitlin Clark or Sabrina style, but she's someone who will force some threes, and she's money. So I think two made threes for this game, especially, she had 6 attempts yesterday, 12 in the previous game. I think Mabry gets there.
I could see that. I'm not going to play that. I was just trying to see where the market has really moved to see if you've got a little bit of market support on any of these. A little bit to the over on Satu, but Mabry had a really big game on Sunday against the Sky, where I had her over points. So I feel more confident in Satu though than I do on Mabry.
So maybe just Sabali. Let's do this. Let's take out the Mabry and just do Sabali 3+ made threes plus 175.
Okay. Okay.
I think it's good. I think a good way to talk it out. Plus 175 for somebody who's going to shoot a bunch against a bad defense. I think I'm okay. I just have to fade the blowout and no run in the fourth quarter. But I think she's going to have open threes. And it was a big game for the Aces. They threw everything at her. So there was a lot of contested shots, but I think we're going to be okay here. I think 3+3s as my only official play from today's show at for Satu Sabali plus 175.
All right,
So we'll
man.
do that.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Let's get
Good.
it.
Good to have a little action there. Wes, and you're on for first half plus 3.5 minus 117 for the Pacers tomorrow night in game 6. Hopefully it won't be the end of the NBA season. We'll have one more. When you're back on the show on Friday, one way or another, we'll talk about some hoops, whether it's WNBA, everything else, and maybe some futures. By the way, I did want to mention I like the Mercury to win it all as a long shot play. I think they're loaded with the superstar power. I like 19 to 1 plus 1900 at Bet Rivers. I meant to mention that a second ago. If you're looking for a long shot, maybe a Lynx style run, I think that's a team with Copper coming back that can make a run. Any opinion there?
What, you like them better in Seattle?
Yeah. The Storm drive me crazy, and I don't think their coach is very good. I think Mercury's got a better coach. Again, they're adding Kalea Copper. She's a hooper.
Yeah.
She's so athletic, so good. I mean, they've been doing okay without her, and they have 3 studs now with Alyssa Thomas and also Satu Sabali. I think this team is awesome. I do agree with Seattle, but I don't think Diggins is that good. And both of them are fine. They're not. They're like as far down on the board I would go in terms of long
Yeah.
shots. I think the Mercury are going to be really tough with Thomas and then the Whitcomb and these other shooters around. And they have a really good coach. I actually like them. I think Seattle's regular season's a little inflated with some of the home court sort of edge that they have with the travel spot. I think the Mercury are. I think they got 3 studs to build, and they have a nice supporting cast.
Yeah, from a long shot standpoint, and I have not bet this, I'm starting to be a little believer in the dream, even though they did blow the game against the Liberty last night. They were up 17 on the Liberty. And maybe there was just some hangover. John Kell Jones was getting back in the lineup. They had just lost their first game at Indiana that I was in attendance in for Saturday. But Carl Semesco is a heck of a coach. And I didn't know if he had the personnel necessarily to kind of play that style he wants, because he's got some like bigger players. Like you're seeing Griner get a little bit less clock. Like she's still contributing, but she's been going under points and not playing as many minutes because they want to get out and run. That's what they want to do. And they want to, they'll let Ryan Howard chuck them up from all over the place. And I've been wrong on her because, I usually like to play some of her unders because I think she has bad shot selection. But man, she's been going over in a lot of these games. And Alicia Gray has just been, I think, almost
awesome.
a borderline first. I think would be a first teamer if the season ended today.
It's funny. We talked about the three teams. We said the cutoff, like they're all plus 1900 to win it all. So they are that next tier or that last tier of sort of long shots that we would consider. I couldn't have any issue. I don't like Seattle, but I do like Atlanta and Phoenix. My pick is Phoenix, but you're right. Atlanta's got a kind of a fun team. I just think I'd rather go with the star power, the big three, if you will, for Phoenix. But I do agree. I told you Atlanta was going to be my favorite win total bet over until Jordan Canada got hurt in the preseason. I didn't know how long she'd be out. Fortunately, she's back. She's healthy. She's starting, and that's a big lift that they're going to have. But you're right. Great coach. The bigs, I like Brianna Jones. I think she's one of the more underrated players in the league, and I think they all play off each other well. And you're right. Ryan Howard's got a lot of Carmelo Anthony in her. So I think they're a nice complement to one another.
Yeah, no question about it. Look, they needed the Liberty to come back. The Fever did to be able to get there because the Dream would have had the tiebreaker. Because even though they split, they had the margin of victory. And really in both of those games, the Dream have actually been a better team than the Fever, having watched both of those games. So the Fever, you're not going to get any good value anyway because it's Caitlin Clark. So it's like you're always going to get that discount, right? You're never going to get what I think is a fair price for that team. So if you're looking a little bit down the board past, I think I would call the big two because I don't think the Aces, even when Aja gets back, I don't think that they're as good as the Liberty or the Lynx. So
I have no doubt.
yeah, exactly. So if you're looking value, I think the team you mentioned and the team I mentioned, Atlanta, might be the team you go to down the board, but going to be tough to not see a Liberty Lynx final.
We'll see. We'll see. I'm not convinced on the Lynx just yet. I think they're missing some pieces this year and they don't rebound at all. But we'll talk more about this on Friday. That's when you're back on the show. We'll have plenty of W talk and hopefully we'll have a game 7 in the NBA finals to discuss. Either way, we'll have a show on Friday and we'll definitely have a show tomorrow as well with professional bettor Chris Massero. We'll break down game 6 and we'll maybe have some more certainty surrounding Tyrese Haliburton's status. So for Wes Reynolds and everyone behind the scenes does an awesome job. You guys know how it's done. Companies, it's not the forward facing people, it's the people behind the scenes. We appreciate you watching. We'll see you back here tomorrow. By the way, I'm Doug Kezirian. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you back here at 3 p.m. Eastern.